He said, I have come to fulfill the law. To fulfill it. Therefore, he couldn't be cursed according to it. And this is why he went to the Garden of Gethsemane and asked God to remove this from him, because he knew how detrimental this was to his message of crucifixion. So I began to see all of these things. So I started to read, I got to the book of Acts and started to read the writings of Paul the Apostle. And things went from this to this. It went from one way to another way. It went completely flipped, turned around. The entire teachings went from obeying God, worshiping God, following the law, to worshiping Jesus Christ and abolishing the law completely. Paul even wrote to the Galatians, "Oh, you foolish Galatians, why are you still following this cursed law?" Jesus Christ came as a curse to remove us from the affliction of this curse. So I said to myself, but Jesus just said a few books before this that whosoever shall break the least of these commandments and teach men to do so shall be the least in the kingdom of heaven. And here you go, Paul preaching this gospel to abolish the law. So I even asked, what is going on here? So I started asking my pastor, and my pastor said, now you're getting into deep water. You know, now you're starting to question the New Testament. You really have some issues. You know, they even thought that I might be, you know, possessed and all kinds of things. So I had a very big conflict going on inside of me, and my friend took me to his textual critic teacher, his professor. People did a Christian professor from Bob Jones University. Because what I asked him was, what happened to all these contradictions? You know, in the Old Testament there are many contradictions. If you study Hebrew language, you'll understand that when you read some of the Old Testament or the Torah, that there are some parts of the Torah that you can see is the most beautiful Arabic that you can see. The most beautiful Hebrew that you can see, just like when you read the Quran. It's very beautiful Hebrew. And then 2 chapters later, you'll see Hebrew that looks like a broken 3-year-old who is trying to scribble some Hebrew down. It looks very colloquial, very dialectic. You can tell it's not the same person speaking. So I went and asked him about all this stuff I saw. And he told me, he said, what you have is a book written by men over centuries and centuries and eons and eons. And he says, and this book started as an original that was copied and copied and copied, and somebody added a mistake, and somebody came behind him and corrected that mistake and added 2 of his own. Someone came and copied it and skipped a line and added a line where it wasn't supposed to be. And then someone else came and copied it and took it to his country, and in order for it to fit well with the doctrine they were teaching, he would cross out a dot here or cross out a word here or change a word here so that it would fit with the theological ideas of this part of the world. And he said, and after all these years, you have a book now that is compiled from all of this, written by the hands of men that still have men's fingerprints left on it. And that's what you have. You have an imperfect book that is only perfected through faith. This is exactly what he told me, that this book is perfected through faith. You cannot perfect it textually. It's not a textually perfect book. Those who believe in it by faith. And so I said, here we go again with this faith thing. You know, I said, God gave me a brain for a reason. If he did not want me to use it, he would remove this reason and logic part of my brain out and replace it with more faith. So, you know, and I was of the opinion, you know, as the saying goes, my grandmother didn't raise a fool. I'm no fool. You know, I said, I can't believe in this. You know, I mean, this book I've been taught is the inerrant word of God, and you're just telling me that it's a book of errors that's only perfect through faith. That's like me taking a 1982 Datsun all beat up and saying, if you believe it can be a Mercedes. If you believe. You know, that would make no sense. You can't take a car to the car dealership and say that. No, if you really believe it, if you look at it right, it's a Mercedes. So I said, no, you know, this is a book full of errors. And God's religion is perfect. If God has a religion, it's perfect. If he has a book, it has to be perfect because he is perfect. So I left Christianity completely. And I decided that I was, you know, I had learned some concepts from the Bible. God was one. You couldn't fool me of that. You know, I had also concepted that there should be nobody standing between me and God because he created me without permission from anyone. Therefore, I don't need to be taking permission from someone to go to him. If I had to be forgiven for something, it should come from him because on the day of judgment, it's going to be me and him alone. And I didn't know about God's prophets yet. You know, I had my doubts and persuasions about that. So I decided to start searching other religions. I went back to Judaism. I studied Judaism. I found the same thing that Jesus taught about two spiritual Jews that leave the law, and Jews that were so caught up in the law that they left no room for spirituality. I studied Buddhism, Hinduism, Taoism, Confucianism, Wiccan, Bushido. You know, everything I could get my hands on, every type of ism or religion, I studied it. But there was one litmus test that I used for every religion. And whenever I met them, or the people or whatever about this religion, I would always ask them, do you have a book? Do you have a book? Because another thing I had come to the conclusion of is that if your religion is true, you should be able to tangibly hand me something and show me that this religion is true. Give me something that I can see. I don't want to hear that faith stuff anymore. I heard that all my life in the car wreck. And it was during this time that I did read one book about Islam in the public library, because I had never heard of Islam ever. But I remember I was looking in the religious section in the library at school, and there was a book about Islam, and or it was in the library, the public library, and I remember it was some title like "Why I'm Not a Muslim" or some, you know, one of these titles that was propagandistic against Islam. But I had no idea, so I just took the book and I read it, and I remember it said that Muslims, M-O-S-L-E-M-S, and any of you knowing Arabic knows that's a very derogatory word. A Muslim is someone who oppresses someone else. That's a very quick sleight of the pen that was used in the past for a very real purpose. It said that Muslims were people who worshipped a moon god named Allah, who lived in a box in the desert in Saudi Arabia, and they were oppressive to women. I remember there was a whole chapter about how they could have 4 wives and as many as they want, actually, because they could marry 2, divorce 1, get 3 more. You know, this whole, you know, and it said that, you know, I remember the one thing that really caught my attention was the whole chapter on jihad, where it said that Muslims were allowed to kill non-Muslims at any time, at any place, without discretion, and it was an honorable act, and not only would they go to heaven before it, but they would get 70 virgins on the way. You know, so I closed the book on Islam, put it back on the shelf, and marked off Islam off my little list of religions, and said thanks but no thanks, and if I ever see a Muslim, I am out. I didn't know, you know, I thought Muslims ran around, you know, marrying as many women as they want and killing non-Muslims. I didn't know that they could also be part-time drug dealers. So I didn't know, I never knew that this guy was Muslim. I didn't put 2 and 2 together. So we were at his house one day, and me and my other friend, the one that, you know, I got into a lot of trouble with, I'm trying to keep him out of trouble now. We were at his house, and we were debating something about religion. I forget what even the topic was, but you know, you had 2 teenagers thinking they know everything. And I was trying to explain something to him about the Bible. And that guy came in and was listening. He said, "Have you ever heard of Islam?" I said, "Yes, I've heard all about Islam." He was like, "Okay, so what do you think of it?" I said, "What do you mean what I think of it? That's probably the worst religion I've ever seen on the face of the planet." He's like, "Why?" And he's like, "But I'm a Muslim." I was like, "Man, stop playing." You know, like, you're an African American. You know, he's like, "So?" I'm like, "The book said you guys were Arab. All the Muslims were Arabs." He was like, "What else did you read in the book?" And I told him. He was like, "Man, what in the, you know, what have you been reading?" He's like, "You need to go to the mosque for Jummah." He's like, he told me, he said, "I'm not a good Muslim." This is what he said to me. He said, "I'm not a good Muslim. I'm not even going to try to front and say I'm a good Muslim." He said, "But I can guide you to some people that can tell you the real truth about Islam," because he knew about my story about wanting to find religion. And he said, "You need to go to the mosque for Jummah." And I said, what's Jummah? He said, "It's just like church with no chairs." And for him, you know, I'm not going inside. That's not happening. You know, and I'm seeing all these people going in. And at this time, it was a predominantly Indo-Paki Arab masjid. Anyone who went in was not American, period. And I did not see even one African American going there. And I did see one. And then when he went in, I heard him talking in a dialect that I realized he was probably from Africa. So I said, "He's not American." So I'm not going. I'm waiting, and I'm standing outside, sitting on the church steps, and the imam pulls up and parks right in front of me, who I had no idea he was the imam. But he got out and he asked me, you know, am I waiting for someone, this, that, and the other? And I explained to him. He said, oh yeah, we know this brother. You don't see him that much, but we know who he is. And, you know, he said, I'm glad you came. You know, he was a very, very nice, gentle young man. And he invited me into the mosque, and I kind of wanted to wait on my friend, you know, but I didn't want, you know, at the same time, I didn't want to tell this man I don't want to go in. So I went in, and they